Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency alarm started screaming through the Earth Defense Command Center. He dropped his cup and ran to the main screen where hundreds of officers were gathering with worried faces. The massive display showed an incoming message from the Galactic Council with the highest priority warning signals flashing red across every surface. Dr. Lisa Carter rushed into the command room still, wearing her lab coat from the research facility. She had been studying peaceful alien cultures for 15 years and had never seen anything like the panic spreading through the room. Commander Ryan Davis appeared next to her looking grim as he pulled up data streams on his portable device. Ambassador Claire Williams materialized on the main screen via emergency transmission from the Council chambers on Nexus Prime. The Galactic Council President appeared on screen with his forearms spread wide in the traditional gesture of grave announcement. Behind him stood representatives from dozens of alien species that humanity had called friends and trading partners for over a century. Their faces showed expressions that humans had learned meant anger, disgust, and betrayal. The president spoke in the universal translation language that reached every human settlement across Earth and the colonies. His words hit like hammer blows against everyone listening. The Zephyrian Empire had presented evidence to the Council, showing that humans were developing illegal biological weapons designed to kill alien life forms. Video recordings showed human scientists torturing captured aliens in secret laboratories. Documents revealed plans for humanity to conquer and enslave every species in the galaxy. Morrison felt his stomach drop as the evidence played across the screens. The videos were crystal clear, showing humans in Earth defense uniforms conducting horrible experiments on screaming alien prisoners. The documents bore official Earth government seals and signatures from leaders Morrison knew personally. Everything looked completely real and utterly damning. Dr. Carter grabbed Morrison's arm as the presentations continued. She whispered that something was wrong because the biological markers in the videos didn't match any human research she knew about. The aliens being tortured belonged to species that had never visited Earth according to all diplomatic records. But her voice was lost in the chaos as more evidence flooded the screens. The Council President announced that immediate action was required to stop humanity's threat to galactic peace. A coalition fleet comprising ships from 23 different species would move toward Earth within hours to enforce what they called corrective measures. The vote was unanimous except for 3 abstentions from species too distant to participate in military action. Ambassador Williams tried desperately to respond but found her communication link cut off. Every human diplomatic channel went dark simultaneously. Earth's voice in the galactic community had been silenced completely. Morrison realized that humanity was about to face the combined military might of most known alien civilizations, based on evidence that felt wrong in ways he couldn't yet explain. Commander Davis started pulling up Earth's defensive capabilities while Morrison tried to process the magnitude of what they faced. Earth had maintained a modest defense fleet, designed mainly for protecting shipping lanes and deterring pirates. The approaching coalition would bring thousands of advanced warships equipped with weapons humanity had only read about in technical journals. Dr. Carter was already working with her research team to analyze the supposed evidence frame by frame. She told Morrison that the video compression algorithms didn't match any Earth-based technology, and the genetic samples from the alleged human perpetrators showed markers that couldn't exist in actual human DNA, but proving the evidence was fake would take time they didn't have. The alien fleet was moving faster than expected. Long-range sensors showed massive formations jumping through hyperspace toward the solar system. Morrison counted at least 2,000 ships in the first wave, with more following behind. Each alien species brought their best military hardware and their most experienced commanders. This wasn't a police action, but a full-scale invasion force. Morrison called an emergency meeting with Earth's top military and scientific leaders. They gathered in the secure conference room deep beneath the command center, where no alien surveillance could reach them. The faces around the table showed the same mixture of shock and determination that Morrison felt burning in his chest. General Mike Chen reported that Earth's ground forces were being mobilized but couldn't possibly resist a planetary invasion by multiple alien species. Captain Amy Rodriguez confirmed that her experimental fighter squadrons were ready for deployment but were vastly outnumbered. Dr. Alex Johnson stated that his weapons development projects could be accelerated but wouldn't Be ready for weeks. Morrison looked around the table at the people who would have to defend humanity against impossible odds. These were the same officers who had maintained peace with alien neighbors for generations. They had trained for conflicts with pirates and smugglers, not for war against the entire galactic community. But Morrison could see something else in their eyes beyond fear and uncertainty. Dr. Carter presented her preliminary analysis of the fabricated evidence. The sophisticated nature of the forgeries suggested resources and technology beyond what most individual alien species possessed. Someone with access to advanced computer systems and detailed knowledge of human culture had created this deception. The question was who had the capability and motivation to frame humanity so completely. Commander Davis added intelligence reports showing unusual activity in Zephyrian space over the past several months. Ships moving to unknown destinations, communication blackouts in sectors that previously had regular traffic, and reports from trade vessels about increased military patrols around Zephyrian worlds. The empire that had accused humanity was also the one showing the most suspicious behavior. Ambassador Williams finally re-established contact from a secure location on Nexus Prime. She reported that several alien diplomats had privately expressed doubts about the evidence but were too afraid to speak publicly. The Zephyrian representatives had been unusually well prepared with responses to every question and had seemingly anticipated every possible objection to their accusations. Morrison made the decision that would define humanity's future. Instead of surrendering or trying to flee, Earth would stand and fight. They would use every defensive advantage they could find while working to expose the truth behind the conspiracy. If humanity was going to be destroyed, they would make sure the galaxy knew they had been deceived. The command center transformed into a hive of activity as officers prepared for the greatest challenge in human history. Morrison watched the approaching alien fleet on the tactical displays and felt a strange calm settle over him. Humanity had been lied about, betrayed by supposed friends, and condemned without a fair trial. But they were still alive, still free, and still capable of fighting back. Dr. Carter promised to find proof of the deception while Morrison planned their defense. Commander Davis would coordinate with the few alien contacts still willing to listen to Earth's side of the story. Ambassador Williams would continue trying to reach reasonable voices within the galactic community. Everyone understood that failure meant the end of human civilization. The alien fleet was 12 hours away from Earth when Morrison gave his final orders. Humanity would show the galaxy exactly what they were capable of when their backs were against the wall. Dr. Ben Taylor worked through the night, analyzing every piece of the fabricated evidence while the alien fleet moved closer to Earth. His computer forensics lab hummed with activity as advanced scanning systems tore apart the video files and documents that had condemned humanity. Lieutenant Sam Phillips brought him coffee and updates from the command center where Captain Morrison was preparing their defenses. Taylor discovered the first major breakthrough at 3 in the morning. The video compression signatures didn't match any known human technology, but showed patterns consistent with Zephyrian digital processing systems. The biological samples allegedly taken from human scientists contained genetic markers that couldn't exist in Earth-based life forms. Someone had used alien technology to create fake evidence and planted human identifiers to make it seem authentic. Meanwhile, Agent Katie Brooks was sending encrypted messages from deep inside Zephyrian territory, where she had been operating undercover for 2 years. Her reports painted a disturbing picture of an empire, desperately trying to hide massive internal problems. Zephyrian worlds were experiencing crop failures, population declines, and resource shortages that their government blamed on external threats rather than admitting systemic failures. Brooks had infiltrated a Zephyrian research facility where scientists were studying genetic samples from dozens of different species. The Zephyrians were searching for biological solutions to problems that threatened their entire civilization. Their own genetic diversity had become so limited through centuries of controlled breeding that their population was slowly dying from inherited diseases and reduced fertility rates. Commander Davis pieced together intelligence reports from across the galaxy showing a pattern of Zephyrian manipulation. Species that joined the coalition against humanity had all received aid packages from the Zephyrian Empire in recent months. Ships carrying food, medical supplies, and technical assistance had visited their worlds just before the accusations against Earth were announced. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental. Dr. Carter made her own discovery while analyzing the alien species shown being tortured in the fake videos. Several of the creatures belonged to civilizations that had gone extinct centuries ago, according to galactic historical records. Others came from species that lived in regions of space no human had ever visited. The creators of the false evidence had made subtle mistakes that proved the videos couldn't possibly be real. The most shocking revelation came when Brooks transmitted data about Zephyrian resource extraction operations. The Empire had been secretly harvesting biological materials from primitive worlds for decades, while publicly supporting galactic laws protecting developing civilizations. Entire ecosystems had been stripped of unique genetic material that the Zephyrians needed for their failing population. Taylor realized that Earth represented something the Zephyrians desperately wanted but couldn't simply take through normal diplomatic channels. Human genetic diversity was extraordinary compared to most alien species. Centuries of global migration and intermingling had created a population with genetic variation that could potentially solve the Zephyrian crisis. But instead of asking for help, they had chosen to frame humanity for crimes and steal what they needed through conquest. Phillips reported that several alien commanders in the approaching fleet were asking unusual questions about human biology and genetic research capabilities. The military invasion was being accompanied by scientists and medical personnel who seemed more interested in capturing humans alive than destroying Earth's defenses. The Coalition fleet wasn't just coming to punish humanity for alleged crimes, but to harvest their genetic material. Brooks discovered that the Zephyrian Empire had been feeding false information to other species for months before the accusations against humanity were announced. Trade reports showed phantom attacks on alien merchant vessels that were blamed on human pirates. Diplomatic communications had been intercepted and altered to make Earth's government seem aggressive and expansionist. The conspiracy had been building for a long time. Dr. Carter found evidence that several species in the Coalition were themselves victims of Zephyrian manipulation. Their own population problems had been secretly caused by biological agents introduced through Zephyrian aid shipments. The Empire had deliberately weakened other civilizations and then offered solutions that required military cooperation against fabricated threats. Humanity wasn't their first target but was meant to be their biggest. Price Davis coordinated with the few alien contacts still willing to communicate with Earth. 3 species had abstained from the Coalition vote not because they were too distant to participate but because their intelligence services had detected inconsistencies in the evidence against humanity. They were quietly investigating the Zephyrian claims but couldn't speak publicly without risking becoming targets themselves. Taylor completed his analysis and presented proof that every piece of evidence against humanity had been fabricated using advanced Zephyrian technology. The digital signatures, biological markers, and compression algorithms all pointed to the same source. But the alien fleet was now only 8 hours away from Earth and might not be willing to listen to contradictory evidence after committing to military action. Brooks transmitted her most dangerous discovery from inside the Zephyrian capital world. The Empire's leadership had already divided up human territory among Coalition partners and planned to relocate Earth's population to controlled facilities for genetic harvesting. Documents showed detailed plans for breeding programs designed to maximize genetic diversity while keeping humans in permanent captivity. This wasn't war but attempted genocide disguised as justice. Morrison received all the intelligence gathered by his team and realized the true scope of what humanity faced. The Zephyrians hadn't just lied about human crimes, but had manipulated dozens of alien civilizations into becoming unwilling accomplices. Some Coalition species genuinely believed they were stopping human aggression, while others had been coerced through artificial crises created by their supposed ally. Dr. Carter proposed a desperate plan to expose the conspiracy before the shooting started. If they could broadcast the evidence to the entire galactic community simultaneously, some Coalition members might realize they had been deceived and withdraw from the attack. But the transmission would need to reach hundreds of different species using communication protocols that Earth barely understood. Davis suggested that Agent Brooks could help by sabotaging Zephyrian communication systems from inside their territory. If the Empire couldn't coordinate their lies during the crisis, the truth might have a chance to spread before they could suppress it. but asking Brooks to reveal herself would almost certainly mean her capture and execution. Phillips reported that Earth's defensive preparations were complete, but couldn't possibly stop the massive fleet approaching their solar system. Humanity's only real hope was to survive long enough to prove their innocence and turn the coalition against their true enemy. The next few hours would determine whether human civilization continued to exist or became another victim of Zephyrian manipulation. Morrison looked at the tactical displays, showing thousands of alien warships preparing to attack Earth. His team had uncovered the truth behind the conspiracy, but the approaching fleet might not be willing to listen. Humanity would have to fight for the right to present their evidence and hope that justice could prevail over carefully crafted lies. The alien fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, expecting to find primitive human defenses and frightened colonies begging for mercy. Instead, they encountered something that shocked every commander in the coalition force. Captain Morrison had positioned Earth ships in formations that no alien military manual had ever described, while energy signatures from human weapons showed technology far beyond what any species thought humans possessed. The Zephyrian admiral, leading the coalition, sent the traditional surrender demand to Earth, expecting immediate compliance. Morrison responded by transmitting Dr. Taylor's evidence of the fabricated accusations directly to every ship in the attacking fleet. The message included proof that the videos were fake, the documents were forged, and the entire case against humanity had been manufactured by the Zephyrian Empire to cover their own crimes. Several alien commanders immediately began questioning their orders as the evidence spread through their fleets. The Altarian ships started moving away from the main formation, while their captains demanded explanations from Zephyrian leadership. The Kellian vessels powered down their weapons and requested permission to withdraw from combat operations. 3 entire species worth of warships began backing away from what they now realized was an unjust war, but the Zephyrian admiral refused to acknowledge the evidence and ordered all coalition forces to begin their attack. Ships that hesitated were threatened with being branded as traitors to the galactic community. The admiral claimed that human deception was so advanced that they could fake any evidence and that the only way to stop their threat was through immediate military action. Morrison gave the order that revealed humanity's true defensive capabilities. Stealth ships that had been hidden throughout the solar system suddenly appeared on every alien sensor screen. These vessels used technology that made them completely invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. The coalition fleet found themselves surrounded by human forces that had been watching and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Captain Amy Rodriguez led the first wave of human fighters in an attack that destroyed the Zephyrian flagship within minutes. Her experimental squadron used quantum weapons that passed through alien shield systems like they didn't exist. The massive Zephyrian command vessel exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up space for millions of kilometers, while Rodriguez's pilots moved on to their next targets. Dr. Alex Johnson's weapons proved devastatingly effective against alien technology that had been designed to fight conventional threats. Human ships fired energy beams that adapted their frequency to match whatever shielding they encountered. Alien vessels that had never been damaged in centuries of warfare found their defenses completely useless against weapons that learned and adjusted with each shot. General Mike Chen coordinated the defense of Earth's orbital installations, while ground-based particle cannons reached out to destroy alien ships at ranges the coalition had thought impossible. The weapons platforms hidden on Luna and Mars revealed themselves by firing streams of accelerated matter that punched through the largest alien warships like paper. Chen's forces had turned the entire solar system into a defensive fortress. The Zephyrian admiral tried to rally the remaining coalition forces by claiming that human military power proved their aggressive intentions. But more alien commanders were reading the evidence Morrison had transmitted and realizing they had been lied to from the beginning. Ship after ship began withdrawing from the battle as captains refused to continue fighting for a cause built on deception. Morrison broadcast a message to the entire galactic community using communication networks that Earth wasn't supposed to have access to. He presented the complete evidence of Zephyrian manipulation, while human forces demonstrated their ability to defend themselves against overwhelming odds. The message reached billions of beings across hundreds of worlds, showing them the truth about the conspiracy. Agent Brooks chose that moment to sabotage the Zephyrian communication systems from inside their territory. Her actions cut off the Empire's ability to coordinate their lies or issue new orders to coalition forces already questioning their mission. Brooks transmitted additional evidence from inside Zephyrian facilities, showing the genetic harvesting operations and population control programs that had been hidden from the galactic community. The battle became a rout as more alien species realized they were fighting on the wrong side. Entire fleets that had come to destroy humanity instead turned their weapons on Zephyrian vessels. The coalition that was supposed to enforce galactic justice became a civil war between species that had been deceived and the Empire that had manipulated them. Rodriguez's squadron hunted down Zephyrian ships trying to escape the solar system. Her pilots had orders to capture rather than destroy whenever possible, because Morrison wanted prisoners who could testify about the conspiracy. The experimental fighters proved capable of disabling alien vessels without killing their crews by using precision strikes that knocked out propulsion and communication systems. Dr. Johnson revealed another surprise when human ships began using weapons that could temporarily disable alien technology without causing permanent damage. These non-lethal systems allowed Morrison's forces to capture intact vessels filled with evidence of Zephyrian crimes. Each captured ship provided more proof of the Empire's manipulation and genetic harvesting operations. Chen's ground forces prepared to receive alien prisoners and refugees as ships full of coalition personnel requested permission to land on Earth. Many alien commanders wanted to formally surrender and apologize for their participation in the unjust war. Others offered to join human forces in hunting down remaining Zephyrian vessels and exposing more evidence of the conspiracy. The Altarian fleet commander publicly announced his species' withdrawal from the coalition and requested permission to establish diplomatic contact with Earth's government. His message was broadcast across the galaxy, showing alien leaders admitting they had been deceived and asking for human forgiveness. Similar announcements came from a dozen other species as the truth continued to spread. Morrison realized that the battle for Earth's survival had become something much larger. Humanity wasn't just defending itself anymore, but had become the center of a galactic revolution against Zephyrian manipulation. Species that had been controlled through lies and artificial crises were finally learning the truth about their supposed ally and benefactor. The last Zephyrian ships in the solar system were either destroyed or captured, as coalition forces helped human vessels hunt down the remaining Empire vessels. Rodriguez reported that several Zephyrian commanders were requesting sanctuary on Earth in exchange for testimony about their government's crimes. These defectors could provide evidence that would expose the full scope of the conspiracy. Dr. Carter began coordinating with alien scientists who wanted to help analyze the genetic research that had motivated the Zephyrian deception. Representatives from species that had suffered population problems offered to share their own research in hopes of finding solutions that didn't require conquest or genocide. The crisis that had nearly destroyed humanity was becoming an opportunity for unprecedented cooperation. Morrison watched the tactical displays show alien fleets forming protective formations around Earth rather than attacking it. In less than 24 hours, humanity had gone from being condemned by the galaxy to becoming the center of an alliance seeking justice against their common enemy. The defensive victory was complete, but the war against Zephyrian tyranny was just beginning. Admiral Susan Blake took command of the largest fleet in galactic history, as ships from dozens of species gathered around Earth to join the campaign against the Zephyrian Empire. Former enemies who had come to destroy humanity now volunteered their most advanced warships and experienced crews for the liberation mission. Blake had never imagined commanding alien vessels, but found their captains eager to follow human leadership after witnessing Earth's defensive capabilities. The combined fleet moved toward Zephyrian space with Morrison's blessing and the full support of Earth's government. Blake's force included not just military vessels, but also hospital ships, supply transports, and scientific research platforms from species that wanted to help document Zephyrian crimes and assist in rebuilding damaged worlds. The mission had grown beyond simple revenge into something resembling a galactic peacekeeping. Operation Colonel Danny Murphy led the first special operations teams to infiltrate Zephyrian facilities ahead of the main fleet. His soldiers used advanced stealth technology that made them invisible to alien sensors while they gathered evidence and rescued prisoners from the Empire's secret research installations. Murphy had trained for operations behind enemy lines but never expected to be liberating entire alien civilizations from their own supposed protectors. The first Zephyrian world Murphy's teams reached contained horrors that shocked even veteran soldiers. Massive facilities held thousands of aliens from dozens of different species in conditions designed for biological experimentation rather than normal captivity. The prisoners included scientists, diplomats, and ordinary citizens who had been kidnapped from their homeworlds and brought to Zephyrian space for genetic research. Dr. Helen Grant accompanied the rescue missions to provide medical care for liberated prisoners and to document the biological crimes committed by Zephyrian researchers. Her team found evidence of forced breeding programs, genetic modification experiments, and systematic harvesting of biological materials from unwilling subjects. The scope of the atrocities went far beyond what anyone had imagined when the conspiracy was first uncovered. Blake's fleet encountered minimal resistance as they moved deeper into Zephyrian territory because the Empire's military forces were scattered and demoralized. Many Zephyrian ships surrendered without fighting once their crews learned about the evidence of their government's crimes. Others simply abandoned their positions and fled toward the Empire's core worlds rather than face human-led forces that had already proven their superiority. Murphy discovered that the Zephyrian Empire controlled hundreds of worlds through a system of lies and artificial crises similar to what they had attempted with humanity. Species that thought they were receiving aid and protection were actually being slowly enslaved through carefully managed dependencies. The Empire had been playing a galactic game of manipulation for centuries while presenting themselves as benevolent leaders. Grant made a breakthrough when she analyzed the genetic problems affecting the Zephyrian population. The Empire's leadership had caused their own crisis through centuries of genetic manipulation designed to create a superior ruling class. Their attempts to engineer perfect genetics had instead created fatal flaws that were slowly killing their entire species. The desperate search for solutions had driven them to increasingly extreme measures. The liberated worlds provided evidence that completely destroyed any remaining support for the Zephyrian Empire within the galactic community. Species that had maintained neutrality during the initial conflict now offered military and economic support for the liberation campaign. The Empire found itself completely isolated as former allies turned against them and neutral parties joined the human-led coalition. Blake's forces reached the heavily fortified border of core Zephyrian space, where the Empire's most loyal military units waited in defensive positions. These systems contained the Empire's most important research facilities and the leadership responsible for centuries of manipulation and genocide. Murphy's intelligence teams reported that the Zephyrians were preparing to destroy evidence rather than allow it to fall into coalition hands. Grant worked with alien scientists from liberated worlds to develop solutions for the genetic problems that had motivated Zephyrian aggression. Her research teams found that cooperation between multiple species could solve biological challenges that no single civilization could address alone. The genetic diversity that the Empire had tried to steal through conquest was being freely shared. Through scientific collaboration, the battle for the Zephyrian core worlds lasted only days as Empire forces crumbled under coordinated attacks from species they had oppressed for generations. Blake's human ships provided technological superiority, while alien allies contributed local knowledge and overwhelming numbers. The Empire's defenses had been designed to fight individual species rather than a united galactic coalition. Murphy led the assault on the Empire's primary research complex, where the most important evidence was stored along with thousands of prisoners from across the galaxy. His teams fought through automated defenses and desperate Zephyrian guards to reach the central facilities before they could be destroyed. The intelligence gathered from these installations provided complete documentation of the Empire's crimes. Grant discovered that Zephyrian scientists had actually solved their genetic crisis years earlier, but their political leadership had hidden the solution to maintain power through continued military expansion. The Empire's rulers had been willing to commit genocide across the galaxy rather than admit that their superiority complex was based on lies. The real tragedy was that all the suffering could have been avoided through honest cooperation. Blake accepted the surrender of the Zephyrian homeworld after their government collapsed and their military commanders refused to continue fighting. The Empire's capital contained billions of ordinary citizens who had been kept ignorant of their leadership's crimes, but would now have to face the consequences of their government's actions. The Liberation Fleet prepared to establish temporary administration while war crimes trials were organized. Murphy's final mission involved capturing the Empire's top leadership before they could escape or destroy themselves to avoid justice. His teams tracked down ministers, generals, and scientists responsible for the conspiracy while protecting evidence that would be needed for proper legal proceedings. Many Zephyrian officials chose to cooperate in exchange for lighter sentences. Grant began working with former Zephyrian researchers who had been forced to participate in the genetic harvesting programs. Many alien scientists within the Empire had opposed their government's policies, but had been threatened into compliance. These individuals provided crucial testimony about the extent of the crimes while helping to develop rehabilitation programs for affected populations. The campaign that had begun as humanity's desperate defense had become a galactic liberation movement that freed hundreds of worlds from Zephyrian oppression. Blake's fleet now controlled the former Empire's territory, while working to establish legitimate governments on planets that had been ruled through deception for generations. The victory was complete, but the work of building a better galactic community was just beginning. Morrison received reports from across former Zephyrian space showing species working together to rebuild their civilizations and establish new forms of cooperation. The conspiracy that had nearly destroyed humanity had instead created opportunities for unprecedented unity among galactic civilizations. The Empire's attempt to divide and conquer had ultimately brought the galaxy together under human leadership. Judge Patricia Stone stood before the largest courtroom ever constructed, as representatives from 300 alien species gathered to witness the trial of Zephyrian war criminals. The proceedings were broadcast live across the galaxy, ensuring that every civilization could see justice being served according to laws that applied equally to all sentient beings. Stone had presided over international courts on Earth but never imagined she would be determining the fate of an entire galactic empire. The evidence presented against the Zephyrian leadership filled digital archives that would take centuries to fully examine. Colonel Murphy's teams had recovered documentation proving systematic genocide, forced experimentation, and manipulation of dozens of species over several hundred years. Dr. Grant's medical testimony described biological crimes that violated every principle of civilized behavior, while Agent Brooks provided firsthand accounts of the conspiracy from inside the Empire. Director Carl Lewis worked with representatives from liberated worlds to establish a new oversight system for galactic governance. The reformed Galactic Council would include transparency requirements, regular inspections, and checks against the kind of manipulation that had allowed the Zephyrian conspiracy to continue for so long. Lewis had experience managing international organizations on Earth, but the scale of reforming galactic government presented challenges no human had ever faced. Captain Emma Walsh commanded relief efforts to worlds devastated by centuries of Zephyrian exploitation. Her humanitarian fleets carried medical supplies, food, and technical assistance to planets where entire ecosystems had been stripped for genetic material. Walsh coordinated with alien specialists who understood the unique needs of different species, while human engineers provided advanced technology for rebuilding damaged infrastructure. The GUSO trials revealed the full extent of Zephyrian manipulation, as former Empire officials testified in exchange for reduced sentences. The conspiracy had reached into every aspect of galactic civilization, with false flag operations, manufactured crises, and carefully planted evidence designed to turn species against each other. The Empire had been playing a game of divide and conquer on a scale that encompassed hundreds of worlds and billions of lives. Stone ensured that justice was served according to established galactic law rather than human concepts of punishment. The proceedings followed legal traditions developed over thousands of years by dozens of different civilizations. Zephyrian defendants received fair trials with competent legal representation, while victims were allowed to present testimony about the crimes committed against their people and their worlds. Lewis discovered that many problems in galactic Governance had existed long before the Zephyrian conspiracy but had been hidden by the Empire's manipulation. Trade disputes, territorial conflicts, and resource shortages had been artificially created or exaggerated to maintain dependence on Zephyrian mediation. The new system would need to address these underlying issues while preventing future manipulation. Walsh's relief operations became models for interspecies cooperation, as human and alien personnel worked together to address humanitarian crises across former Zephyrian territory. Her teams developed new protocols for providing aid that respected cultural differences while ensuring effective assistance. The relief efforts demonstrated that species could work together productively when not divided by artificial conflicts. Dr. Grant made the breakthrough that solved the genetic crisis affecting multiple species across the galaxy. Her research teams discovered that genetic diversity could be enhanced through cooperation between compatible species rather than through conquest and forced breeding. The solution required voluntary participation and careful scientific monitoring, but offered hope for civilizations that had been slowly dying from genetic stagnation. The reformed Galactic Council held its first session with humanity playing a leading role in establishing new policies and procedures. Ambassador Williams addressed the Assembly as Earth's representative, but also as a voice for justice and cooperation throughout the galaxy. The humans who had been falsely accused and nearly destroyed now found themselves respected as leaders in building a better interstellar community. Stone announced the verdicts in the war crimes trials. After months of testimony and deliberation, the highest-ranking Zephyrian officials received life sentences for genocide and crimes against civilization, while lower-level participants received punishments proportional to their involvement. The sentences were carried out according to galactic law, with provisions for rehabilitation and eventual reintegration into society for those who demonstrated genuine remorse. Lewis presented the new charter for galactic governance that included provisions learned from humanity's experience with international law and democratic institutions. The reformed system included elected representatives, independent oversight bodies, and protection for the rights of individual species and their populations. No single empire or alliance would ever again be able to manipulate the galaxy through deception and artificial crises. Walsh's humanitarian operations evolved into permanent institutions for interspecies cooperation and mutual aid. The relief networks established during the Liberation Campaign became the foundation for addressing natural disasters, resource shortages, and other challenges that required coordinated responses from multiple civilizations. Human organizational skills combined with alien expertise created effective solutions for problems that had plagued the galaxy for generations. Grants, genetic research led to voluntary cooperation, programs that allowed species to share biological knowledge and resources for mutual benefit. The diversity that the Zephyrians had tried to steal through conquest was now being freely exchanged through scientific collaboration. Species that had been enemies found common ground in addressing biological challenges that threatened their long-term survival. Morrison received reports from across the galaxy showing former Zephyrian worlds establishing democratic governments and joining the reformed galactic community. The Liberation Campaign had not just removed a tyrannical empire, but had created opportunities for political and social development that had been suppressed for centuries. Worlds that had been controlled through fear and manipulation were now free to determine their own futures. The final session of the war crimes trials included testimony from thousands of victims representing dozens of species that had suffered under Zephyrian rule. Stone ensured that every voice was heard and every crime was documented for future generations to remember. The proceedings created a permanent record that would prevent historical revisionism and ensure that the truth about the conspiracy was never forgotten. Lewis announced the ratification of the new galactic charter by representatives from over 400 species, including many that had never participated in interstellar governance before. The reformed system provided representation for civilizations of all sizes and development levels, while maintaining the cooperation needed for addressing galaxy-wide challenges. Humanity's influence was evident throughout the charter, but the final document reflected contributions from every member species. Walsh concluded her relief operations as the last of the liberated worlds achieved self-sufficiency and established their own governments. The humanitarian networks she had created would continue operating under the new galactic system, providing assistance wherever it was needed. The cooperation between human and alien personnel had created lasting friendships and professional relationships that would benefit the galaxy for generations. Ambassador Williams delivered the closing address to the reformed Galactic Council as Earth's representative and as a symbol of how truth and justice could triumph over deception and tyranny. Her words were broadcast across the galaxy, reaching billions of beings who had witnessed humanity's transformation from victims of conspiracy to leaders of galactic renewal. The species that had been condemned by lies had become the foundation for a new era of cooperation and justice among the stars.